Well, good evening, everyone. It's 5 o'clock and we have a quorum. So I think I will call the meeting to order. The first order of business is to approve the agenda today, and I'd like to ask that we approve it with a slight amendment, which is that item 4A actually doesn't require a vote. It's not noted on the printed agenda. So is there a motion to approve the board meeting agenda with that slight change?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Seconded. All right, moved and seconded.
Down there, so I moved over, but.
Okay. All in favor of approving the agenda? Aye. And any opposed? Thank you. And the next item on our agenda is public discussion. Are there members of the public who would like to address the board? There seem not to be. Okay, well, now we move on to the aforementioned and very exciting item 4A. Ellsworth, do you want to give us a little background here?
Sure. So you're looking at the budget, a document we call the budget in brief. It's basically the operational budget we've put together for next fiscal year with sort of some budget lines condensed to give you an overview of what we're going to the city to ask for as far as the budget. In the kickoff meeting for the budget, we were asked to prepare as close to a flat budget as possible, including inflation. You know, with only excluding personnel from that request. You can see that we did not offer a truly flat budget. We tried to get as close as we could, being mindful of some critical things like service contracts and the cost of basic supplies are high enough that we felt like, at least for the first conversation, we're going to put what we truly think we're going to spend. We did also make sort of a priority list to take with us to the first meeting that we'll have with budget so that we can talk through, if we have to get down to a 0% increase, you know, here are the things that we feel the most strongly about maintaining. But this is the package that we intend to present to finance. This is what we've entered into Munis. The deadlines this year and most years don't line up perfectly for our process, but I did let finance know that we had a meeting tonight, and if any changes were requested by the board, we would need to be able to go back into the financial software and update that. So we have entered it, the deadline has passed, but they know that we could come back and ask for a time to update that. Where there were sort of gross changes, we did add small notes. I think our biggest overall overage is that miscellaneous commodities, where we put the $30,000 for clock replacement. That's not a typo, and $20,000 for the book returns. I think everything else is probably relatively self-explanatory with inflation and other changes, but we're more than happy to talk through any points that people have questions.
New clocks.
Yeah.
So expensive.
Yeah.
Yes, I heard
How
that.
many clocks do we get for 30?
So that would be 50 clocks. And what that cost covers is the mechanisms, the antenna on the roof, and the install of the antenna on the roof, and the calibration to set them all in the beginning. It does not include the installation of each clock, but that's something that our facilities team could do. If this comes back as an issue with the city, we could have another solution. We think this is the best product for public service, but if we need to, we could find an alternate solution. Any alternate solution requires more staff time and more up and down on the ladder and battery changing and all that stuff. But if this isn't possible right now, we could figure out an alternative. The book returns are a little less negotiable because we are concerned that we're getting to a sort of public safety level with those. If that's not possible right now, I think I'd ask facilities to take a look and see if they or a vendor could, if there's any repair that could be made, anything that could sort of tighten up those rusty edges and get us through a couple more years. But I feel pretty strongly that it's time for those to be replaced.
Do you mean like east side, like at Hy-Vee, or like the east side of the building?
He said, I have,
Okay.
yeah, sorry.
I was wondering about the personnel increases, given what you mentioned about inflation. That's something, personnel feel significantly. Is that significant enough? Is that, and I don't know what past years have seen for increases.
So personnel is the one area of our budget that is managed by the city as far as the entry into munis. So this takes into account the cost of living within the union contracts, and any step increases that library staff would have. So this does cover the normal increase. It does not cover anything extra for additional inflation that's happening.
What is the cost of living piece?
2%.
It's 2%.
2% this year.
Okay.
It was
And is that a
negotiated-
set or?
It's negotiated out a set number of years with the union contract.
Great.
They have a 5-year, and the last year of the contract, it can be reopened for wages. But the first 4 years.
Yeah, so this was negotiated before we remembered that inflation happens.
Inflation at the time was less than the first.
Yeah.
And so,
Very good deal.
Do you know what year we're at, like that 5-year, do you any? Oh, so we're not at a year where we could even negotiate,
2 or 3.
not at a point that.
That's your.
Yeah, that was during COVID when that was passed, so we're early.
It's either year 2 or 3, I believe. And I honestly, I don't know if the union could petition to reopen early. I'm not sure what the process is.
I mean, I suppose in the city,
Who is our union steward now?
they're having a leadership change.
Okay.
That's where.
I don't know if our steward has changed or not. I know that the overall local AFSCME that we're part of has changed the big leadership positions, but we haven't learned yet if our steward has changed.
Okay.
So as far as I know, Terry Byers is still the acting steward, but I know that they have been in conversations. And Wilmoth is the secretary to children's.
and so there's no expected reopening like we did. Our teachers union has a 3 to 5 year contract, but we stipulate opening wages annually, but that's not a part of this at all.
I don't remember seeing a stipulation.
Negotiated contract.
Okay.
The 5th year of the 5-year contract that they want.
And everyone in the city is in the same union except fire and police, right?
Correct, but AFSCME is split. There's a transit section because transit has different bargaining rights under the Iowa State Code versus the rest of the staff.
Okay, so it would be bigger than just the library staff being involved.
Right.
in that.
Right.
Then,
I also think the consultants line is going up, said strategic planning.
and that was the question I had also, that's our plan for strategic.
32060.
Down on page 2/page 5 of the packet. Page 2 of the
Right,
the top.
yeah, some of that consultants is used for IT, right? Consulting, is that where your consulting work comes out of?
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of that is sort of standing IT consultancy, and I think we put a small increase for strategic plan and other projects that we might do with outside the scope there.
Back to personnel, do I remember correctly that we went with the city's benefits package? Do we see like a dramatic change in that overall as a cost, or is it basically the same?
So I think that there has been a significant cost in the city's part of insurance that has not been known to staff at this point. So our insurance out-of-pocket costs have not changed.
Okay.
I mean, the cost of insurance has not gone up. Open enrollment does start next month, so we may learn more or different, but
I mean, it's not a very dramatic difference, but just wondering if that's gonna play a role as the benefits change. But
What is longevity? I don't understand that. Is a budget
Like to
term.
buy some?
I'd like to buy some, but
So I
That's pretty
believe
cheap.
longevity is that after certain amounts of years, people get an increase, is it an increase or a one time? I haven't been here long enough to benefit from it.
5 years.
So starting at 5 years, when you hit milestone years, you get additional,
it's a salary line.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a bonus kind of line.
And-
And ours,
Go down slightly.
the last page.
will go. it
Usually
goes
only
with
goes down if you have retirees.
Long-term retirement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some sort of like a yearly bonus.
And termination, is this like, I mean, no, it's not occurring this year or last year, but it's occurred in the past. Is a buyout for, or it's hard to, I just didn't know what that was.
Unemployment benefit.
I mean, I know what termination is, but I don't know why it costs.
It's two lines combined. Is that unemployment, Karen, and possibly like accrual payout?
I was gonna say,
I don't know if I know.
Vacation
exactly,
payout.
but I could dig into it deeper if you wanted to. So it was what, 8,000? My guess is that it would be,
And that would make sense because of that fiscal year 19 high number for the COVID closure when we did have to furlough a number of staff.
wanted to just make a clarification next year, and that fiscal year, it's 2.25% for an increase. Wages, and then the following year it's 2%.
Okay.
I was very surprised by how low the amount is. In fact, it's zero. I think this year for equipment repair and maintenance supply. So that's on page 1 of the budget here. And it's 46,630 and to something else, but I'm sorry, 46,720.
Yeah, my guess is that's just a line that we've shifted away from using. Because we certainly have repair and maintenance
I
costs.
mean,
I'm guessing that it was moved into a different supply or repair section of the budget.
Yes, also as we go forward, sanitation supplies kind of went really up. We were sanitizing through COVID. Are we seeing still increased need of, I mean, I know the cost of things has also gone up, but are you still seeing that high need for sanitation supplies, et cetera?
We budgeted as if we would continue buying masks because we weren't sure. And I think that it's not as much the volume anymore, but it's the increased prices
Mhm.
that make that.
Mhm.
And our use of masks and our use of hand sanitizer has gone down very significantly. But we do still want to have that option if we.
Right, in case we do have the triple threat, like they're saying, potentially this year.
Other questions for Ellsworth? Discussion? Would look for a motion to approve.
We don't need to, I thought.
We amended the agenda. Oh. Say that we didn't need to.
Oh, I was very confused when you said amend the agenda to say we don't need to take action. I was like, but it already says that. Clearly, I didn't know what I was voting on.
So, yeah, so 4A does in fact need a vote, and DJ is.
I'll second,
And a second.
now that I know what we're doing.
Same.
One more note about this, because we are a semi-autonomous department, the board has more control over our budget than other departments have a different hierarchy of who owns this. So if we were to get into the middle of the year and needed to do a shift within these budget lines, this group has the authority to do that. So we do have, we try not to, but it does mean that if there was another pandemic or something, we could shift resources accordingly, as long as the board was agreeable to it. Which I think is a real benefit, especially in years where the budget's a little tighter.
I have one more comment. I'm still for approving, but I'm just kind of interested by the IT hardware software being zero. Is that elsewhere in the budget, we're talking about IT, different expenses that we're seeing, like moving into cloud computing and that was, is that just coming out of a different line? Maybe that we have zero on this budget for IT hardware and software. But I assume we're still spending money on IT upgrades and keeping things up to date. Am I just confused? Well, just on the main budget, it's in the overall operating budget, it's toward the very end, capital expenditure. Oh, is that just from?
Yeah, that's the capital.
Okay, I just can't read a budget.
No, it's confusing the way it's. Jen and I have aspirations to make this a little more user friendly. And we do have, there's been a.
Okay, it's just elsewhere in here that I didn't see it. Oh, mhm. Okay. It's
Yeah,
just
there are
elsewhere.
a couple other lines.
in here. Okay.
Um,
Oh, here we go. Miscellaneous computer software, hardware, etc. has the chunk. Okay, I just want to make sure that it was just capital expenditures. And I was confused. All right.
The CIP is part of this as well, right? The two CIPs or?
those are not reflected.
Okay.
That's a separate budget process.
Okay. Yeah, the number continues with these pages.
Okay, we already
Okay,
made a
so
motion.
we've got a motion on the table. Anything else to ask? Then I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? Thank you.
The next piece of the budget discussion is we included the CIP forms just as informative. You have seen the furnishing and carpet many times. This is not a new one, but the boardroom and meeting room renovation is a new one. We're just trying to be proactive in making sure we don't miss out on that preventative maintenance and end up in a place that we have more emergency needs. So things like refacing the table, making sure the cabinets are cleaned up, things like that. We wanted to get it in now in case it takes any discussion to pass it through. And then the last part of this part of the finance discussion are those first quarter financial statistics. I feel like the budget to me feels great right now. It feels very healthy. It feels like it's where it should be. You'll see we did do some bulk purchasing to try to cut off inflation costs on a few things that we felt like we could sort of get a handle on. But otherwise, it's about where I would expect. The year is very young. We'll see how we feel in the middle. But right now, I mean, especially kind of remembering the COVID expense years, it feels more normal, manageable. And I thought it sort of spoke for itself, but of course, happy to answer any questions that we didn't pull out and answer here.
Did our newly formed finance committee meet?
No, we did not.
Okay. I was just curious. I didn't have questions for them. Just curious if that happened.
Any other questions about that first quarter? Okay. Well, that takes us to staff reports. Starting with Ellsworth. I have two small additions.
came out after the publication of the package. One is just a quick and fun one. The Ped Mall playground is open for business. It's not completely finished. They're putting in the shade poles before winter. Will all be done soon, and then the sun shade will be added in the spring. I think that they figured why put it in and have a winter wear when we could wait for spring. And Andrew gets to see it much more than the rest of us out the window, but so far the feedback is good and it's really fun to have it back. So we're pleased about that. The second was Noah Kim has resigned from the board. And we will be filling that vacancy as soon as possible. It will be in the next council packet. So that's next week, the meeting. What happens in this kind of situation is the standing applications are revisited, but new applications can also be submitted. So I would, with sort of the current climate in public libraries, I think this is a great time to think about your own networks and your own communities. And if you have people that you think would be a good fit for the library board, it's a great time to sort of invite them to apply and pass on the information. It is a vacancy that could be filled by a female identified person. So that's the only limiting factor for the seat. It is, it's like a full 5-year seat. So it's a little shortened, but it's not a good fit for somebody who's like, oh, I'd like to do that, but not for a full 6 years. It's almost a full. So,
You know when those applications are due? Must be pretty soon.
I can find out. So I think that they're announcing the vacancy
I gotcha.
at next week's meeting, and then they'll
So
take applications.
Okay. Okay.
Otherwise, happy to answer any questions folks have from the report.
Is there anything, since you wrote this on the drag queen story hour, that's come up?
The only update is the Iowa City Human Rights Commission released a statement of support. I emailed that out. I didn't know they were working on that, but
That's great.
But of course, we appreciate the support. And I thought that they did a great job sort of tying it into broader issues and illustrating it's not just about an event at the library. This impacts, I thought, especially youth kind of throughout the community, which I think is a healthy way to do it. I think I shared with the board, I actually didn't get any community feedback after the event until the newspaper article came out. And then I heard from a handful of people, but not anywhere near the volume I expected. Because I hear from people all the time about tons of programs and anything, but this one just didn't. People just didn't reach out. I didn't get a really good, clear temperature check with people afterwards, but I'm hoping that at this point we're beyond sort of the hump of that. It was pretty tough for the staff that were involved, and I think then there was sort of a secondary ripple of staff that weren't there. But, we sent several emails sort of saying, this is what happened. This is how we're processing it. This is our next step. So I think that for both those that were actively involved and everybody else, it was kind of a reality check of this can happen in Iowa City. It's all of the prep work we've done around intellectual freedom. This is why, and that sort of just we need to continue to be vigilant. We do have another drag queen story time tentatively planned for February around Valentine's Day. My hope is that will be a children's event, sort of as a family event as intended, and that we will not have half a room full of adults either in support or not in support. It's really intended to be a community event for kids and families who are there to participate. So
Will that be a weekend again?
Be Saturday.
Okay.
and
Part of me likes to think that after midterm elections, that it will be a non-issue
The elections will be
entirely, and we'll
over.
go back to. You had it before with the zero.
There's six
Sixth time, so part of me thinks that midterm elections are what they want to crunch in, and that your February event will just be a lovely midwinter dance party, which is what it should be.
We did, with previous events, I've called the police chief and just sort of said, hey, we're having this event. We haven't heard any issues, but just to let you know. And this was the first time I did not do that. It felt like it's always been fine.
Actually, here.
Yeah.
It was closed by the farmer's market, but.
And luckily we were both able to get in very quickly. But next time I will reach out proactively and Dustin and I will decide together, should we have someone here just in case? Should we just have somebody sort of on call? What does that look like? In the situation that just happened, I do feel like if an officer had come into that room, I believe it would have escalated things in a potentially unpleasant and scary way. It's gonna be scary for like the kids involved.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think we will have a dialogue before the next one. And we also keep a pretty close eye on social media to sort of see if there's any dialogue beforehand. But we're all hoping that it goes back to what it's intended to be.
Have a simultaneous police officer touch a truck program. You know, like, it just happens to be the same day.
You know, it sounded like you and Angie and the staff were present, handled it really well. Any lessons about how to handle an event like that?
Well, we had one of the city attorneys come to our next leadership team meeting and kind of walk through the decisions that were made, make sure that we were finding that balance between free speech or First Amendment rights and library use policy. And in retrospect, I feel like we did everything right. She really helped clarify with us, it's about, you have to focus on the behavior that's happening, not the ideology. So if you're blocking access to strollers, that's what we're going to talk about. Right. We're not talking about why you're there. It's just, you got to let folks through. This, like frequent things at the library, I think what's hard is trying to sort of quantify or apply to the policy that general harassment of staff. So how much do we ask staff to take as far as being called groomers or being called pedophiles or being, these offensive things that people may say, how much of that is our role to be able to just sort of deflect and say, we're going to disagree on that and we need to move forward, or when do we escalate it? And we talked with the attorney about that. There's not a lot of black and white guidelines, but I would say that as a library director, that's my major concern, is making sure that staff feel informed and empowered to know where that line might be and what to do if things step over it. Because yes, we celebrate and protect First Amendment rights, but that doesn't mean that staff can be abused or harassed. They also suggested, the attorney, that if there was any part of the policy that felt like it might warrant a revisit, and not because anything was done wrong, but because it seemed to be sort of heat points for us, was whether or not we wanted to say anything about holding signs, whether in the library or in programs, or to look at what we say about videotaping in the library. Because it sort of makes me nervous to even bring that one up, because I think enforcement will be so complex. Anytime somebody has a cell phone out, most staff have to go have a dialogue. But I think it's absolutely worth the conversation, and maybe there are creative solutions that I don't know about yet. But the signage one is something I hadn't thought about. And we could certainly look at that next time we look at library use, or before if we want to.
Those both sound like hard ones to figure out.
Did they disrupt at all verbally? Did they interrupt the program in a direct confrontational way?
I would say not in a dramatic way. They sort of talked about normal speaking voice. sort of constantly. And Angie and I were standing right in front of them, and sometimes it was sort of like, we'll keep talking, like, I think
They did
that,
the same thing
Um,
over and over again, just so that they could be talking.
but I do believe that they were aware of the general rights that they had and the laws around it. But no, there was no yelling, there was no chanting. I think that there were louder voices in the lobby beforehand, and I wasn't there for that. I got here sort of right as the program was about to start. And that had been managed already by the library staff.
Well, I will say that I did see a video that one of them took, and I specifically, Ellsworth, I saw you and Angie standing between them and everyone. And I know it's a profoundly difficult situation to be in, but frankly, to see the two of you and all of staff handle it how you did, that stood very tall for me. I don't know how else to put it, and it's very much appreciated. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Thanks for saying that. I was really struck by Mary's points as the facilitator of the program. That it's hard enough to sing and dance in front of an audience, period, and to add that pressure. she really so professional in how she approached it. And some of the staff were not even called to the room. They sort of either walked by or heard something was happening and just thought, I'm going to join that and be present and help hand out shaker eggs and things like that. To me, that felt like the most successful part of sort of trying to lower the impact was just having more staff faces in the room so that people knew if they needed to say something to one of us, we were right there. There were plenty of us that could be grabbed. And I also felt like it was important to sort of, as each person walked by us, to thank them for coming and to sort of make the eye contact and acknowledge, like, we're glad you're here and we're trying to keep it as pleasant as possible. So
It was a Mr. Rogers moment. Look for the helpers.
Anything else on Ellsworth's director's report? We can move on to the children's services report. Anything to highlight or add?
At this time, but just make sure you put December 9th on your calendars as the board. You guys are invited to in-service day at Jason and our facilities. The morning will be strategic planning. Ellsworth and Becky Heil from the State Library will be leading that in the morning. So that is for our brand new strategic plan. So board members, it's good for you guys to be there to help for the next 5 years. And then in the afternoon, we'll be doing some sessions. Breakfast, lunch.
and
Great data development.
that counts as board development too.
Yes.
Right.
So you're looking for those opportunities.
You want those credits.
Right. Okay, and collection services? Anything, any questions?
I wanted to say that the bibliography period on intellectual freedom is really useful,
Yeah.
really well
great.
done. So thank you for that.
And did you have good turnout at the ILA?
We did, and there were several board members, there was one from the city, one from Davenport, as well as two from. So that was
Nice.
good to see trustees engaged.
Awesome. What else? Gloat on yourself.
Come on.
Did you get to go? What else do you get to get?
Might be doing a webinar for the state library.
Oh, great.
It's a definite use of word.
Yes. President right there.
Yes. Excellent.
It was brilliant.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Having been a public librarian in the middle of nowhere, I wouldn't have been able to get away to do an ILA. So a webinar would be really useful to people all over the rural the mostly rural state that we have. So, yeah, that'd be definitely a great addition.
But even doing this work, I mean, the second part of my board report is about genre label changes, and even doing this work ourselves, just doing more research and thinking through some of the practices that we have at the library, some of the changes we can make are based on reading that intellectual freedom manual, looking at the interpretations, really scrutinizing how lot of practices. Bibliography and the genre label changes.
I like the deliberation with which you explained those label changes and everything. I think most people would look at it like, yeah, whatever. But realistically, you explain why it matters and how important it is. So thank you.
I think a lot of times collection services is one of those things where if it's done really well, no one should notice it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like graphic design is one of those things too. Like if you do it perfectly, no one notices it because it doesn't catch your eye and it isn't glaring. And I think this is a good example of one of those moments where it shouldn't catch, you know, like the Christian fiction label, like it shouldn't catch people's eyes or, you know, like these things. It's just one of those things that takes a lot of thought to make something so seamless, and I appreciate it.
Anything else for me? And any questions? Oh, sorry. Yeah, there we go. Questions or comments for IT for us? Okay, quiet.
Revisit one thing in the.
Yeah, of course.
I think in a previous month, I mentioned that our liaison to the city management office has changed. It's now Redmond Jones, who actually is here today. So thanks for stopping, Redmond. He's, I would still say new deputy city manager. And I look forward to getting to know him better and sort of introducing more about library operations. But this is a good chance to make a face-to-face connection with Redmond.
Welcome, I'm glad you could be here. Let's see, I don't think we have any miscellaneous staff reports. Do you have Carol's president's report to read for you, Carol? Regrets that she's not here. The first person here shall refer to Carol. Okay. I apologize for my somewhat poor attendance record in recent months. Thanks to Tom for taking over during my absences. As you are meeting, I am hiking somewhere in the Southern Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina. I'd like to thank ICPL for the opportunity to attend the recent ILA conference in Coralville, where I listened to a number of worthwhile presentations. Personally, I found the opening keynote address by Crystal Hayden to be especially thought-provoking. She talked about living life as a person of multiple marginalized identities, queer, deaf, and she suggests that because human beings are complicated, social justice work requires an expansive view of potentially disabling factors in the environment. As a bonus, the speaker's stand-up comedy skills elevated the presentation beyond thought-provoking to highly entertaining. I hope Robin and DJ also found the conference to be worthwhile. Thanks to the ICPL staff who led sessions on a variety of topics. It's unfortunate that many of the ICPL staff presentations were scheduled at the same time, so I was only able to attend one of them. Thanks to Robin for being part of one of these sessions and for serving on the conference's speakers committee. Her dedication to promoting libraries and the role of trustees is laudable. At the November board meeting, I will be appointing the Director Evaluation Committee. The committee will have 3 members, hopefully with at least one member who has been through the process before. The committee has broad discretion to fashion the evaluation process in any way it sees fit. The committee's final report will be presented at the February meeting. Please contact me before the November meeting if you are willing to be a part of the committee. I'd rather appoint volunteers than draftees. In discussions with Ellsworth, I know that he has already given some thought to his goals for the upcoming year. And the evaluation process is the board's way of providing him with the feedback he deserves from us. Finally, as Ellsworth mentioned, Noah has submitted her resignation with the ICPL board. Changes in her personal life have necessitated a move away from Iowa City. In her message to me, she expressed that she's disappointed to be leaving us, just as she felt that she was beginning to grow into the role. Ellsworth will and has initiated the process with city council to find a replacement. So that is the president's report.
I swear we just did the evaluation.
I know, it's like you always do again.
We did it like last month.
Yeah. I heard there's the option of not doing
No.
it. Pretty sure you're wrong. Carol's,
Yeah.
we'll talk.
Yeah. The next item on the agenda is announcements from members.
Just like to recognize Sam with,
Yeah.
next month's packet, we can get the picture with the gavel and the hammer. That would be rad.
I'll see if I can dig up one. I'm not sure.
Here, Halloween
Maybe
costume.
elsewhere you could put that, you could add pictures.
I know, I could have, I just.
Yeah. Next up. Do you have any committee reports in the foundation? No.
I think the meeting was scheduled for September 15th. That was the last one, and I believe there's one again in November.
And communications were included in the packet. That press citizen article was a remarkable piece of local journalism. I just have to say, we don't have that many reporters that can do that thorough of a job. And I was impressed with that.
I appreciated the framing of it as well, that it wasn't, protest. The framing was the protesters were the problem, not the reason why they were protesting. So, yeah.
We come to the consent agenda, which includes approving the minutes from September and the disbursements for September. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Moved.
Moved. And a second?
I have a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And finally, we will set the agenda order for the November meeting. That includes appointing the Directors Evaluation Committee and a policy review on collection development, departmental reports. That's the agenda for the whole.
I have a somewhat random question. Since Noah is leaving, and I know our board is now saying, you said that a person identifying as she now as we're moving forward, is that going to continue? Like, who decides? I know that we are keeping gender balance, not part of the policy, but just, I don't know,
It's state
speculating
law.
into the future. It's state law. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, so it would take
Legislative.
It would
action
take
to change.
legislative action to make that different.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe.
Just curious.
That female identified is what we're asked. I think that's what I'm
That's all you
asking
have to
for.
say.
I think that we could make a case for that at the city level, if it was ever questioned. So
Just curious where that's coming from, and also like if we're ever going to talk about it being different than that, but if it's state law, it's going to be a while.
Yeah, it's.
I'm just
Yeah, I
curious.
think
It's gonna.
it's
That's
gonna
a
be a
slow
while.
moving. That's a slow moving.
I mean, I
road,
think-
so.
Yeah, and the more likely state action, be to remove a balance requirement than to
Right.
broaden.
Right.
Yeah, so,
Okay. Just curious.
yeah. Okay, having completed our business, I'm adjourning this meeting. That probably happened.
Thank you all.